Hi friends, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my favourite books of the year so far. I have numbered this list from 10 to 1, with 1 being the highest, and I'll run through them in that order, and I do think the order could change on a different day, so take the order with a pinch of salt. But yeah, I would really recommend all these books. I've enjoyed them all a lot, and they're definitely my favourites of what I've read so far this year. A couple of things to note from this list: I have excluded rereads. So for instance, I probably would have included My Brother's Husband on this list again, but I decided against it because it is a reread. And I have also excluded a couple of books which I'm kind of like thinking they could be favourites, but I'm not totally sure on their favourite status quite yet. And so Tiny Moons is one of those. I really enjoyed that book, but I'm not sure if it's going to stay with me for a really long time, or how I'll feel about it in a month or so. I only just read it quite recently, so it still feels very fresh and I feel very positive about it. Definitely really enjoyed it, but whether or not it will land on my favourites list, I don't know. So we'll take that as it comes. But in 10th place we have The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa and translated by Stephen Snyder. This is translated from the Japanese. It's a slim Japanese novel. I read it on ebook format, so I don't have a full concept of just how slim it is, but I remember it being quite a quick read. I really enjoyed this one. It follows a housekeeper who goes to work with a professor and both of whom are unnamed, and they just go by these titles. And the housekeeper's son sometimes comes to work with her, and it just basically follows their relationships, their dynamics as a threesome, as a group of three. And the professor kind of tries to he kind of forms like a mentoring kind of fatherly role towards this young boy who comes with the housekeeper. And the professor also has short-term memory loss, so he forgets their visits, and then they have to kind of restart, and he carries all these notes on his jacket of all the kind of things he should remember about the housekeeper, about her son. I just found it really, really moving. The professor is also a professor of mathematician. He's a mathematician, sorry, and I found that really, really interesting, the kind of maths element. There was like actual algebra in the book, and like it kind of played into the plot slightly, and I just really enjoyed this. I thought the relationships were really sweet and touching, and I got really engrossed in the story. It's in 10th place because I don't know if it'll be an end of year favourite, but it's one I read in January and it stuck with me. It's the kind of book I can imagine revisiting and getting even more out of the second time around, so I might do that at some point. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one and would highly recommend it. I'll probably say that for all the books in this list, but starting out strong with number 10. So in number 9th place, there was 2 graphic novels I was kind of toying between for this position. So one of which was LaGuardia by Nnedi Okorafor, and I really enjoyed that one. It's like sci-fi, and it kind of kick-started a sci-fi spree for me, and I got really into reading sci-fi off the back of that graphic novel, and really, really enjoyed it. So that was kind of one that I was toying with to put on the list. And then the other one was Witchy, and that's the one that made the list, and that's by Ariel, Slamet, Ries. And the reason this made the list is because I keep recommending it. I've gifted it to people. I have posted about it online on all my platforms. I just totally, totally loved it, and I still remember this overwhelming feeling of like blissful calm after reading it. So it's a fantasy graphic novel. We follow a young person who is living in a world in which the strength of your magic is determined by the length of your hair. Such an interesting concept, and it kind of talks about discrimination and talks about wider societal structures, but puts it within this framework of hair, which is something that is quite unusual. I don't see it often, and I've never seen that as a world building idea, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I loved the character and I loved the illustrations, like they were so beautiful. I'll see if I can find a clip that I made of me flipping through the book. It was a library book that I read, but I just absolutely adored this. And as I say, afterwards, after I finished reading it, I had this overwhelming feeling of like calm, and even took a nap afterwards. And this was in a period of like quite high stress, just a few things that were going on. And I read this and just felt so just peaceful at the end. So it's definitely one I would really recommend, especially if you're looking for a sort of escapist novel or graphic novel format. I really enjoyed it. In 8th place we have How We Met by Huma Qureshi, and this is a memoir that follows Huma Qureshi, who is a British Muslim, and it's about her relationship with her partner. How we met, it's about their love story, but it's also about so much more than that. It's about love and family, it's about grief, and it tells her life story in a way, but centering in on this relationship. I found it so moving. I remember crying while reading it multiple times. I loved the scenes of family connections through food. I loved the kind of reflections on their relationship, and how they kind of built a loving relationship together. I thought it was just really, really moving, and I just remember feeling like so touched by this memoir. It's really, really beautiful, and it's quite simply written, which I do like in a memoir format. I like kind of quite simplistic language, and I think it kind of lets you get connected with what's going on in the story and in the person's story, rather than focusing on flowery language or something. I think that it really kind of lets you get into the heart of what was going on with them and their life experience, and I just absolutely loved it. In 7th place is a romance novel, The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. I read both of Helen Hoang's novels this year, The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test, and I really enjoyed them both. But The Kiss Quotient stood out to me because it was quite unusual, I guess. It follows a sex worker, and a male sex worker, I should say, and an autistic woman who hires him to teach her how to be in relationships and teach her how to have sex, which sounds like quite a strange concept, but it's because she'd had quite difficult relationships in her past and some really unsettling and horrible experiences with men who had not particularly treated her with kindness and respect in the bedroom, and she thought it was her fault, and she thought it was somehow related to her autism, and she wanted this man to kind of teach her how to enjoy it, I guess, and how to kind of show that she was enjoying it. And instead what he taught her is how to actually enjoy it and how to connect with yourself in that way and connect with the physicality of your body, and and to ultimately enjoy it. And I just thought it was a really beautiful exploration of healthy sexual relationships, of consent, of I also just love the main characters, the two main characters. We got both their points of view, and I really loved hearing both their points of view, especially as one situation might become quite intense emotionally for one of them, and we would flip to the other one and you would kind of see a different perspective on the same situation and things like that. I just thought it was really well done. I cannot wait to read the next Helen Hoang. I think it's called The Heart Principle, and it comes out in September, I think, so I'm really looking forward to reading that and hoping for more of the same of what I now come to expect from a Helen Hoang novel. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that one. Next up, we have Elle by Kid Toussaint and Aveline Stockart. This is a graphic novel where we follow a young girl who has DID, or dissociative identity disorder. It's a really, really nice graphic novel. What I really loved about it is it kind of breaks down some of the stigmas that are attached to DID, and it kind of makes it more understandable for people who maybe don't understand the condition, have never heard of it or experienced it by anyone who's close to them in their life. I also find it really, really interesting because I have read some other books about DID. I read Kim Noble's All of Me memoir, which is absolutely brilliant. I would really recommend that. And I watch quite a fair amount of YouTube videos from people who have DID and stuff like that. And I think that often what you hear people say is that there's quite a negative perception or misunderstanding about DID. And I love the way that this graphic novel kind of made it really clear and really really just helped to kind of break down these misperceptions that a lot of people carry about the condition. And yeah, I just really loved it. I thought it was a very sort of sweet story. It's also the first in a series, which is, I think, partly funded by the European Commission. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading more in the series as we follow Elle's and all of her different alters and their kind of journey through life. I think it's going to be a really nice series, so I'm looking forward to that continuing. In 5th place, we have another memoir, and that is We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. And this is just really beautiful and moving memoir about a Muslim woman who moved with her family from Pakistan to Canada, and it's about her relationship with her queerness, her relationship with Islam, her relationship with her family, and how these kind of play in, and her community, and how these kind of play into who she is as a person. We follow her from childhood all the way through to adulthood as she explores these various different identities and kind of feels her way through them, and like how she feels within them. So sometimes she kind of battles with like her identity as a queer person, her identity as a Muslim person, and yeah, just kind of how she sits on the intersection between being queer and being Muslim, and kind of finding a community of queer Muslim people or Muslim people who identify as part of the LGBT plus community. Just really beautiful, really moving again. Quite a short memoir, but one that I know will stay with me. I really loved it, and would definitely really recommend it. And in 4th place, we have The Split by Laura Kay. I really enjoyed this one. It's like laugh out loud funny, really wholesome. You experience a whole range of emotions. At points I was crying, other points I was laughing, other times it was just like wholesome and lovely. I really enjoyed it, and it basically follows a young woman whose girlfriend breaks up with her, and she goes back from London to Sheffield to live with her dad, and there she connects with an old friend, and together they decide to join a running challenge. I think it's like a 10k race, and they join this running group, this local running group, and it follows them and their experiences as they kind of get to know the running group and the relationships they form, and also the friendship that they kind of rekindle together. I really enjoyed this one. It got me back into running actually after quite a while of kind of not running, which is partially because of COVID and gyms closing and not feeling comfy going to the gym. But this one kind of reminded me of the joy of running outside again, and I got back into running after reading the book. It also had me doing all kinds of stuff, like in it they mention like brownies, and I was like, oh, I really crave brownies, and they have like cups of teas with their pals, and I was thinking like how nice that is. They went to the pub one night and had beers, and then went and had a curry, and I got beer and curry in for us to have. And obviously, as I say, got back into running. So I found myself like really engrossed in this book and really invested in the characters. And I felt like the main character became like a friend, which is so strange. I never have that experience with characters in books. And I just felt really like this is somebody who I would be friends with. So it was a really nice experience reading this book, and it has really stuck with me. So it's definitely one I'd recommend, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. In 3rd place, we have The Woman Next Door by Yewande Omotoso, and this is a story about 2 elderly women. I think it's hard to say how old they are because it's never actually mentioned explicitly in the book, but they live in South Africa. They're next door neighbours, and they have like a deep-seated resentment and dislike for each other, and you really don't know why. That's kind of the puzzle of the book, is partially working out why these women really don't like each other. And it sounds really kind of surface level and really kind of like a kind of common storyline, like 2 characters don't like each other. Oh yeah, like not really that inventive. But honestly, this book blew me away with its complexity. Like, it's just, I don't want to say too much about it. It's so difficult to review this book because I don't want to say too much about it, because you can easily give a lot away because there is so much that the reader doesn't know and is revealed gradually through the plot. And I think that unravelling is just so brilliant and masterfully done. And I will definitely be picking up the next book by this author, which comes out in the autumn. I ordered a secondhand copy of Boy, which is the author's debut, but it never arrived. So it's just one of these things we live in Iceland. Sometimes things are really hard to get your hands on, but I would really love to read that one as well. But I really feel like this is an author that you definitely want to watch out for, because her ability to craft characters and write relationships is just so brilliant. I absolutely loved this story and would really recommend it. As I say, it is quite complex, and I would check content warnings if that's something you need, because the unravelling, there are some things that some readers might find difficult to read about. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed that one. And I wrote out this list before kind of deciding what order to put them in and how to rank them. And I think this book kind of surprised me with how high it ranked when I kind of came to do that, because I have thought about it a lot and I do really rate it, but I wouldn't necessarily have thought of it as my favourite book of the year. But in second place comes a poetry collection, and that is Felon by Reginald Dwayne Betts. This follows the author's, it kind of revolves around the author's experience of being incarcerated in the United States, and it kind of interrogates the system and points out the kind of structural inequalities in the prison system, in the criminal justice system, and it does so through these really masterful poems, some of which are like redacted court records made into like poetry, and it was just so clever. And other poems are like just really touching personal poems about like the poet's relationship with their child and their relationship with himself, following the kind of prejudice they experience coming out of prison and being labelled a felon and all this kind of thing. I find it really moving, and if you know me, this is something that I really like to read about. My background's in criminology, so it is a topic that I really like to read about, but I thought this poetry collection was just genius, really clever. Would highly recommend it. And finally, in the top spot, you'll be wondering why it's not been mentioned yet if you follow me on Instagram and have heard me go on about this book, but I really love this one. It's actually a backlist title. It's called My Name is Leon by Kit de Waal. I love this book. It follows Leon, who is a young boy who is in care, or is separated at the start of the novel from his mum and placed into foster care in the UK. It's set in the 1980s, and the 1980s as a setting takes on a sort of character-like feeling in the book. Very cleverly done. But overall, it just kind of explores this young man's experience of being in care, and the separation from their younger brother, and how they kind of cope with that kind of experience. It's written from the child's perspective, which is not something I usually enjoy, but I think Kit de Waal did that so cleverly and just really masterfully done. I absolutely loved it. It blew me away, and yeah, it was one of the first books I read this year, and it stuck with me the whole time. So yeah, definitely give it a go if you haven't already read it. And that's everything for this top 10 list of books I've read so far this year. Have you read any of the books I've talked about? Did you enjoy them? Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what you have read this year that you have loved, and if you have any recommendations for me, either based on what I have said here or just based on books that you have loved. I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching. That's everything from me, and I will see you again in my next video.